3 days before our wedding, my fiancée vanished for 24 hours. Her phone was off. Her family panicked. I filed a police report. She came back smiling, said she just needed space. I pulled the toll records. She'd spent the night at her ex's apartment in Philly. I said nothing until the ceremony. 130 guests. Full church. The priest asked, "Is the groom here?" I was. Just not for her. "My name's George. I'm 31. I work in product development for a medical device company in New Jersey, the kind of job no one really understands unless they're in it." Melissa and I had been together for 4 years, engaged for 1. We were supposed to get married on a Saturday in mid-May. A classic church wedding, 130 guests, plated dinner, her cousins flying in from Toronto, mine from Chicago. Every chair accounted for, and everything was normal. Until it wasn't. It started on a Wednesday night, just 3 days before the ceremony. We were wrapping up dinner at her parents' place, where most of the last-minute planning had taken over the living room. Cake samples, seating charts, endless phone calls to the florist. Melissa had been distracted all night. I assumed it was stress. She wasn't eating much, kept glancing at her phone, and left the table a few times to check something with the planner. After dinner, she said she needed a night to herself. I didn't think much of it. "I just want to take a long bath and crash early," she said, kissing my cheek. "I'll text you in a bit." I told her I'd grab a drink with my best man, Eric, and head home. Only, she never texted. By midnight, I was calling her. No answer. Her phone rang twice, then went to voicemail. I called again at 1:30 a.m. Still nothing. I tried her mom. Nothing. I even texted her bridesmaids group chat. They hadn't heard from her either. By 3 a.m., Melissa's mother was calling every hospital in the county. Her dad drove past her apartment twice and said the lights were off. No sign of her car. At 6 a.m., I filed a missing persons report. I didn't sleep. Neither did her family. Her sister cried nonstop. Eric offered to drive around with me. We even stopped by a few 24-hour spots she used to frequent in college, a cafe, a yoga studio, even a scenic overlook off Route 9. Nothing. Then, at 8:37 p.m., nearly 24 hours after she'd vanished, Melissa walked into her parents' house like she had just come back from a spa day. Hair washed. Calm. Her mom practically collapsed. I stood in the kitchen, trying to hold it together while she gave the most bizarre explanation I've ever heard. "I needed space," she said. "Everything's been so overwhelming, and I just needed a night to breathe." Her mom asked why her phone was off. She shrugged. "I turned it off so I wouldn't be tempted to talk to anyone and get dragged into more planning stuff." She hugged her sister. Said she'd be back in the morning for the rehearsal. Then she looked at me like everything was fine. Like I was supposed to just fall back into place. I nodded, told her to get some rest, and left. But the second I got home, I opened our shared Easy Pass account on my laptop. Just a hunch. We'd used the same tag for over a year, and I remembered once seeing her log into it to check her toll history for taxes. There it was. One transaction. 2:17 a.m. Delaware River Bridge. Eastbound into Pennsylvania. I searched the exit and stared at the street name for 5 minutes. Chestnut Street. West Philadelphia. That address, it wasn't just familiar. It was specific. It was where her ex-boyfriend, Brandon, used to live. A guy she hadn't spoken about in years. A guy she claimed had moved to Florida. A guy she once admitted nearly proposed to her back in college before things ended badly. I sat there, jaw clenched, staring at the screen while everything I thought I knew just cracked. She didn't need space. She needed him. I checked again. She'd gone over the bridge at 2:17 a.m. and didn't return until the following evening, a full 18 hours later. The toll record caught her heading back through the bridge at 6:49 p.m., exactly 1 hour before she strolled back into her family's house, acting like nothing had happened. I didn't tell anyone. Not that night. Not the next morning at the rehearsal. Not even when she wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "2 more days, babe." Instead, I smiled. Said, "Yeah, almost there." Then I made some calls. Quiet ones. I called an old friend who lived in Philly. Asked him, casually, if he knew if Brandon still lived on Chestnut. He did. Same building. Same floor. Still single, according to Facebook. Then I started digging. Uber records. Hotel charges. She didn't take one. She didn't stay at a hotel. She had spent the night at his place. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed her to walk all the way to the edge. I needed her to believe she'd gotten away with it. Let her write the vows. Let her pose for the dress rehearsal. Let her sip wine at the welcome dinner and say forever in front of my family. Because the moment I saw that address, I knew the wedding was already off. She just didn't know it yet. The day before the wedding, Melissa woke up humming. She pattered around her apartment barefoot, packing her last things into a white overnight bag embroidered with bride in gold. She texted me a photo of her shoes and wrote, "Can't believe tomorrow's the day." I didn't reply. I was sitting in my car outside her building, staring at the text while finishing a black coffee that had gone cold. I'd been parked there for almost an hour, just watching. I wasn't hoping to catch her slipping again. I already knew what she'd done. This was about control. I needed to feel like I was the one driving this now. Her parents had booked a room block at a hotel near the church. That night, Melissa was supposed to stay in the bridal suite with her maid of honor. I drove by the hotel just to make sure everything was real. There was her name on the digital welcome sign. A welcome bag with her initials at the front desk. Everything was moving forward like nothing had happened. I had lunch with my parents that afternoon. My dad asked if I was nervous. I told him honestly, not really. My mom handed me a watch that belonged to my grandfather and said he wore it on his wedding day. It still works. It did. So did I. At the rehearsal, Melissa looked at me like she was already picturing our wedding photos. Her hands found mine every few minutes, holding tight. At one point, she leaned over during a pause in the priest's instructions and whispered, "Promise me you're not going to cry tomorrow." I looked her in the eye and said, "Only if you surprise me." Her bridesmaids giggled behind her. I smiled with them. Back home, I laid out the pieces I'd collected, the toll records, the return time, the screenshots from her social media that showed her MIA during those hours. I printed them out. No theatrics, no bold letters or red markers. Just facts. A neat folder labeled with the date. Then I drafted a short speech. Nothing dramatic. No accusations. Just clarity. That night, Eric came over. He asked if I was sure about what I was doing. I told him I'd never been more sure of anything. He didn't argue. "I'll be there," he said. "No matter what happens." The next morning, wedding day, I woke up before sunrise. I took a shower, shaved, put on the tux I never planned to wear past noon. I looked at myself in the mirror and felt steady. I wasn't hurt anymore. I wasn't even angry. I had rehearsed this enough in my mind that the emotions had flattened into something colder, quieter. My phone buzzed. It was Melissa. "On my way to the church. Can't wait to see you." I didn't respond. At 10:40 a.m., guests began arriving. The ushers handed out programs. The pianist played soft classical music. I could hear laughter echoing from the hallway as bridesmaids clattered down the corridor in heels. At 11:03 a.m., Melissa's father gave me a bear hug and told me I was officially the best decision his daughter ever made. I smiled and told him, "Thank you, sir." At 11:19 a.m., the photographer asked me to pose for a few solo shots. I obliged. I wanted there to be proof that I was there. Then I showed up. At 11:32 a.m., the priest peeked out from behind the altar and gave me a thumbs up. "Ready when you are," he said. I took my place at the front. The pianist shifted to Pachelbel's canon. The guests stood, and I waited. Not for her. For the perfect moment. Because she wasn't walking toward a future. She was walking into a truth she thought she buried. One more minute. That's all I needed. And when the priest asked, "Is the groom here?" I smiled and said, "I think it's time we started." The music slowed as the doors to the church swung open. Melissa stood there in her dress, strapless, ivory, cathedral-length veil. Her hair was pinned just like in the Pinterest photo she showed me a year ago. Her makeup flawless, eyes scanning the crowd. She was glowing, confident. The kind of woman who thought she'd won. People gasped when she appeared. Phones lifted. Cameras clicked. Her father extended his arm, and she took it. The two of them started the long walk down the aisle. I stayed exactly where I was, standing at the altar, still as stone. When they reached the front, her dad kissed her cheek and handed her off to me. She took my hands and whispered, "Hi, future husband." I didn't reply. The priest began, "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to celebrate the union of..." I raised a hand. "I'm sorry," I said calmly. "Before we continue, there's something I need to say." Whispers rippled through the pews. The priest hesitated. Melissa's smile faltered. "This won't take long," I added. I turned to face the crowd. I pulled out a small envelope from inside my jacket pocket and placed it on the altar. Then I stepped forward and spoke, not just to the people sitting there, but to Melissa. 3 days ago, the woman standing beside me disappeared for 24 hours. Her family panicked. I filed a police report, and when she returned, she told everyone she just needed space. I heard someone gasp. I didn't ask questions. I didn't demand answers. I simply waited. Then I checked our toll records. Because I wanted the truth. Melissa's eyes widened. Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't speak. She drove to Philadelphia. At 2:17 a.m. She spent 18 hours there. Her phone was off the entire time. She came back smiling. No explanation beyond needing a break. But the address she went to? It belonged to Brandon. Dead silence. I turned to Melissa. "Your ex. The one who supposedly moved to Florida. The one you said you hadn't seen in years." Melissa looked pale now. Her hands trembled at her sides. "I didn't come here today to make a scene. I came here to let you show everyone the version of yourself you were desperate to be. But now they know. I won't marry someone who lies this easily. This deeply. This close to a promise that was supposed to last forever. The priest looked horrified. Guests shifted uncomfortably. Melissa stepped forward slightly and whispered, "George, please." But I wasn't finished. I already canceled the honeymoon. The venue was paid in full, so everyone's welcome to stay for the reception. I hope you enjoy the food. My family won't be attending. I stepped down from the altar, removed the ring from my finger, and placed it on the envelope. "And Melissa," I added, my voice steady, "you can explain all this to your family. Or you can call Brandon. I hear he's great at disappearing when it matters most." I walked down the aisle alone. No music, just the sound of people trying to process what had just happened. Behind me, Melissa finally broke the silence. "Wait, George." I stopped at the doorway, turned to look at her one last time. She looked small. Not the glowing bride. Not the confident woman with secrets. Just small. "I didn't sleep with him," she said, almost too quietly for others to hear. "I didn't say you did," I replied. "You just didn't sleep at home." I left the church, got into my car, pulled away without looking in the rear view. An hour later, Eric called. "She tried to chase after you," he said. Her dad stopped her. "Good," I said. "He deserves the explanation, not me." I drove to a friend's cabin upstate that I had booked 2 days earlier, right after confirming she went to Brandon's. No signal, no internet, just trees, a lake, and 3 days of silence. When I came back to town, my phone had 46 missed calls, 11 voicemails. A few from her, most from her mom, one from Brandon. Yeah, he had the audacity. I didn't listen to any of them. Instead, I went back to work like nothing had happened. But the aftermath? It was loud. Turns out, Brandon dumped her the day after the wedding fallout. Apparently, the plan wasn't what she thought it was. He never promised her anything. From what I was told, she confessed everything to him thinking he'd pick her up from the ashes. He didn't even answer her texts. Her parents were furious. Her father sent me an email apologizing. Said he'd raised her better. I didn't reply. Melissa's sister reached out a week later. "I know you don't owe me anything, but I want you to know. I saw the signs. I just didn't think she'd go through with it. We loved you, George. We still do." That part hit hard. Because for a long time, I thought I had finally found a family to belong to. But apparently, you can be perfect on paper and still invisible in someone else's story. A month later, I bumped into a former co-worker of Melissa's. She told me something I wasn't expecting. Apparently, Melissa and Brandon had reconnected 6 months earlier. Not in person, just messages. Harmless at first, then frequent, then secretive. He'd been in town for a conference, and that's when it crossed the line. She went to Philly one more time after that, around Christmas. Lied about visiting a cousin. She had practiced lying before. That part, the rehearsal, is what broke me more than the betrayal itself. Not that she saw him again, but that she practiced. Over and over, with a straight face. She said she wasn't sure what she wanted. But apparently, she was sure enough to drive 90 miles through the night without telling anyone. And yet the part people always ask me about is the ending. Why the church? Why the spectacle? Why not just cancel it quietly? And the truth is simple. She needed the mirror. She needed to see herself, not through my eyes, but through the eyes of the people who believed in her the most. She needed to watch her perfect illusion collapse in real time. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't expose her with screenshots or messages or videos. I just let her truth stand next to mine, and let people decide who was still standing at the end. I kept the suit, not out of sentiment, just as a reminder, don't ignore your instincts, even when the whole world tells you to trust love, trust patterns, trust silence, and always check the toll records. 2 days after the wedding that never was, I went back to the church. Not for closure. I had that already. I just wanted to return the watch. My grandfather's watch, the one my mom had pressed into my hand the day before, thinking it'd be passed down to my own son someday. It wasn't cursed or anything like that. I just didn't want it attached to that memory. That day, that building. I gave it back to my parents quietly, no long speeches. My mom hugged me like she was the one who needed forgiveness. My dad just nodded, eyes darker than usual. That was his way of saying he'd take care of it. Of me. Melissa never tried to see me in person. She called, left voicemails, sent a 2-page email 3 days after the disaster. Subject line, "You deserve the truth." I never opened it. I didn't need to read excuses typed between sips of Chardonnay or tears on a keyboard. I already knew the truth, and I'd watched her walk it down the aisle. But I heard things. From friends. From people who were there. From people who weren't, but knew someone who was. Apparently, after I left the church, Melissa stood at the altar for another 10 minutes. Didn't cry. Didn't move. Her dad told her to take off the veil and leave. Her mom collapsed into a pew. Guests trickled out quietly, murmuring, stunned. The reception still happened, kind of. People ate. The caterers didn't pack up. The bartender kept pouring. It turned into more of a wake than a wedding. Her aunt reportedly took home 4 centerpieces. Her maid of honor threw up in a planter. Brandon didn't return her calls either. 2 weeks later, Melissa lost her job. Not because of the scandal itself, but because the HR manager who happened to be at the wedding was her boss's wife. Small world. Or maybe just poetic symmetry. Her parents stopped posting about her on Facebook. The same family that once blasted our engagement photos like we were royalty now only shared pictures of their dog and sunsets. I ran into her younger brother at a diner 6 weeks later. He sat 2 booths over, didn't notice me until he was halfway through his sandwich. When he saw me, he stood up slowly and came over. He said, "You were too good to be part of that family." I knew it then. Everyone does now. I didn't say much. Just thanked him. It was strange. Not satisfying. Not bitter. Just final. 1 month after that, I did open her email. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe. Or boredom. Or the leftover thread of a man who once thought she was his future. It read like a confession, but not a clean one. She admitted going to Philly. Claimed she just wanted to know if there were any leftover feelings before she closed that door forever. Said Brandon kissed her. Said she panicked. That she didn't expect it to mean anything. But she never actually denied sleeping with him. She also blamed stress, pressure, the wedding, her mom, her own self-sabotage. All the usual ingredients when someone burns down their own house and asks you to feel bad about the matches. I didn't reply, just archived it and deleted the thread. I moved out of my apartment 6 months early, broke the lease, paid the penalty. I wanted nothing with shared memories or the drawer that once held her toothbrush. My friend Eric helped me find a new place, smaller, older, quieter. It had creaky floors and no central air, but I slept better there than I had in a year. I didn't date for a while, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to carry the smoke from one fire into someone else's house. I worked. I cooked. I picked up running. I didn't become some glowing transformation story, but I lived on my own terms again. The last thing I'll say is this. You can't always predict betrayal. Sometimes it hides behind perfect smiles and shared calendars. Sometimes it's silent until it roars. But if you ever find yourself doubting someone you're about to marry, don't ignore it. Not for peace. Not for the illusion of stability. Not because invitations have already been sent. No one gets credit for staying quiet while someone else destroys the life you were building. If I'd confronted her before the wedding, maybe she would have spun a story. Maybe her family would have circled the wagons. Maybe I would have ended up standing beside someone who buried the truth deep enough to pass for loyal. But instead, I waited. I let her dress up the lie. Let her show everyone the costume. Then I gave her the stage and let the truth walk in behind her. And that's the part no one forgets. Because betrayal whispered is painful, but betrayal exposed in the light? That's unforgettable. And I made sure she'd never forget it either. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day. And trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.